You know that 6 divided by 3 means to take 6 objects and divide them into 3 equal groups. There would be 2 in each group. You can think of division with unit fractions in the same way. A unit fraction is a fraction with a numerator of 1. So in all these pieces, you have the 1, and then all the other pieces are unit fractions because they have a numerator of 1. Okay? Okay, I want you to look at the first example. Remy has 2 gallons of lemonade. She needs to divide the lemonade into 1/4 gallon containers. How many 1/4 gallon containers does she need? So we have 2 gallons divided by 1/4 containers. So represent the 2 gallons by placing 2 whole fraction tiles. Okay, so you have those. I have one here. Place enough 1/4 fraction tiles below the 2 whole fraction tiles to represent the same amount. Okay, so take your 1/4 pieces, they're yellow, and put them below the 1, the whole number.
I have all of my pieces. I'm sorry. That you have all pieces. Hey, let's save this. I also found.
Okay. Okay, so for 1, it takes 4. So think about this as the 2 gallons, and then these, each one, these are the pitchers or the containers that she's pouring them into. So for 1 gallon, she would have 4 containers. For 2 gallons, she would have how many containers? 8, right. Okay, so below your 1/4, label each one of those pieces with 1/4. And what we're doing here, we're taking a whole number, dividing by a unit fraction. So guys, you have your pencils now and you're working on here. Pencil. Label each piece under the 1/4. How many 1/4 fraction tiles did it take to equal the 2 whole fraction tiles? How many pieces? How many containers? How many 1/4 pieces? Chris?
8.
8. So 2 divided by 1/4 is 8. Remy will need 8 containers. I want you to notice something before you turn your page. I want you to notice that we started with the whole number 2. We divided by the unit fraction 1/4. The quotient is 8. Okay? The quotient is bigger than the dividend. The dividend is 2. Okay? Keep that in mind. You have the dividend of 2 divided by the unit fraction. The quotient is bigger because you're talking about pieces of 1. So right here, if you have 1 divided by 1/4, the quotient is 4. Okay? Because what you're really asking is how many pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the quotient would be 4 is bigger than the dividend, 1. Does that make sense? Okay, I want you to turn your page over. So you're looking at page 260. This time we're doing the opposite thing. On the first problem, we took a whole number and divided it by a unit fraction. This time we're taking the unit fraction and dividing it by a whole number. Place 1/5 fraction tile. So find your 1/5 piece. It's green. Find your 1/5 piece. It's green. Since you are dividing by 2, you are dividing. Can you open that? Okay. Okay. Since you are dividing by 2, you are dividing 1/5 into 2 equal groups. Find a fraction tile that when placed twice will be the same size as the 1/5 fraction tile. Okay, find a fraction that when you put it under here twice, the same one, it's going to equal 1/5. Okay, it's not 1/8. That's too big. Okay, again, take your 1/5 fraction tile and find what one piece you can put underneath it 2 times, and it will be the same size. Label the model with the fraction tiles you placed. You should have 1/10. You should have the purple, not the 1/8, but the 1/10. How many 1/10 fraction tiles did it take to equal the 1/5 fraction tile? 2. Took 2 pieces. So 1/5 divided by 2 equals 1/10. Okay, I want to stop right there. I want you to think about this. You took a unit fraction. We took a unit fraction. We divided it by the whole number 2. The quotient is 1/10. So in this case, this is the opposite case as before. We have 1/5 divided by a whole number, and the quotient got smaller. The answer is always going to be smaller because you're taking a fraction and dividing it into equal groups. Does that make sense? And they just get smaller and smaller and smaller as you go down. Like, see how Chris has built his right here in William, and then every piece is smaller all the way down. Okay?
Eventually just gonna sort of
All right. I want you to go down to where it says talk about it on your page. You should have the top part of that page filled out. We labeled under 1/5. Each piece is 1/10. What fraction did you place? 1/10. How many 1/10 fraction tiles did it take to equal 1/5? 2. The quotient is 1/10. You should have all of that filled out, and you should be on number 1 underneath the process standard. Number 1, when the whole number greater than 1 is divided by a unit fraction less than 1, the quotient is always greater than the dividend. Okay, so that's like the first example we did where you had a quotient greater than 1 divided by a unit fraction, and the answer was 8. Remember that? 2 gallons divided by 1/4 gallon containers, 8 containers. So look back at your problem and make sure you have to answer true or false, and then you have to explain. When a whole number greater than 1 is divided by a unit fraction less than 1, the quotient is always greater than the dividend. True or false? It's true. It is true. Explain in your own words. Take a minute and think about it and explain it in your own words. Yes, it's true, but you have to explain it. William, we're on number 1. Can you get your pencil out of your mouth, please? Think about what we did in the first example. It was 2 gallons. We divided it into 1/4 gallon containers. There were 8 of them. So you took the whole number, divided it into fractions. The quotient is bigger. The quotient, 8, is bigger than the dividend. Always. Chris, what did you write for your explanation?
true. Unit fractions are smaller than whole numbers.
Okay. You're dividing them into fractional groups. So the quotient is always going to be greater than the dividend. Number 2 is the opposite question. When a unit fraction less than 1 is divided by a whole number, so a unit fraction is divided by a whole number, the quotient is always greater than the dividend. True or false? So when we took 1/5 and divided it by 2, we got 1/10. Okay, 1/10 was the quotient. 1/5 was the dividend. Okay, true or false? The quotient is always going to be larger than the dividend. False. It is false. You're taking a fraction and dividing it into equal groups. So that is false. Number 2, I want you to write false, and then I want you to explain why in your own words. This is their example. Whoops.